Hi, I'm Louise from Spin City, and today I'm going to show you how to use a drop spindle. To get started, you'll need a drop spindle and some fibre to spin with. Drop spindles come in two different forms, top whorl and bottom whorl. Today I'm using a top whorl spindle. Let's get started. Our drop spindle is made from a shaft and a whorl. This is the shaft here, and this is our whorl. To get started, we're going to need a piece of leader yarn. And this leader yarn can be any waste yarn that you've got lying around the house. And all you need to do is wrap it onto the bottom of the shaft below your whorl and wrap it on quite tightly. Make sure it's secure. Leave yourself a little bit of a tail, about 20 centimetres or so. Take it up over the top of the whorl and wrap it around the top of the shaft, above the whorl, and then through the hook, leaving yourself a tail. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to overlap the fibre with our leader yarn. So take your fibre and your leader yarn and hold the two horizontally together. Pinch the two together using a firm pinch and then dangle your spindle in front of you. With your other hand, hold the bottom of the shaft and give it a short twirl in a clockwise direction, a bit like clicking your fingers, and you're just going to watch the spindle spinning for a couple of seconds. Then we're going to stop the spindle from spinning and you're going to park it between your knees. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to draft the fibre. We've built up some twist in front of our pinched fingers, and it's really important to keep a tight pinch. And what we're going to do is we're going to swap hands. So take the pinch over from your other hand, and with your free hand you're going to pull backwards ever so slowly to draft the fibres, and all drafting means is pulling fibres apart. So you've got your hands spaced a little away from each other, and you're going to let go of your first hand but not your second hand. And when you let go of your first pinch, the twist is going to jump from one hand to the other, and this really is the magic part. So here it goes. Just like that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to repeat. Give it another twirl, stop the spindle from spinning and put it between your knees. Then take the pinch over again and pull backwards with your hand. Re-pinch and then let the twist jump up to your second hand. So now you've spun a little bit of thread, we're going to wind it onto the spindle. And the way we do that is, you take your spindle and you very slowly twist it so that the yarn is free from the hook. Then you're going to wind it onto the base of the shaft underneath the whorl. You want to leave yourself a little bit of a tail because we're going up over the top of the whorl, around the top of the shaft and back through the hook again. And you're ready to start spinning again. When I teach people to spin, one of the most common fears that people have is that they're going to break the fibre. Now, this really isn't anything to worry about. In fact, what I want you to do is I want you to deliberately pull the fibre apart so that it breaks. So go back to your drafting position and pull your hand backwards and keep going so that the fibre pulls apart. So the way you join these two together is really simple. You just overlap the two ends, pinch them in the middle, and then put a bit of twist into it. And it's as if there was never a break at all. So one of the most important things about learning to spin is to keep a very tight pinch on your fibre. And the reason you need to do this is because if you let the twist that you've built up move into your unspun fibre even just a little bit, it makes it much harder to pull apart and to draft. So if you can remember to do one thing, it's to keep a very tight pinch on your fibre. I want to talk a little more about drafting. Now when you draft, you want to keep your hands a fair distance away from each other. And the reason you do this is because if you take a look at some individual strands of fibre, you can see that the staple length is really quite long, and it's almost about 10 centimetres long. If you try to draft with your fingers really close together, then the fibre's not going anywhere. But if you hold at the ends of the staple length, so about 10 centimetres away from each other, then the fibres just slip apart and it makes it so much easier to draft. A lot of people ask me, how can you determine the thickness of your yarn? Now, this is one of the best bits about being a spinner, because you can choose exactly how thick or how fine your yarn is. It's a bit like you're being the designer. So in order to make a fine yarn, all that really means is that you need to draft your fibres a lot finer. You need to leave a lot less fibre in your drafting zone. If you wanted to make a thick yarn, all you need to do is leave a lot more fibre in your drafting zone. So let me demonstrate how to make a finer yarn. So you put twist into your yarn just like normal. Then when you draft, just spend a little more time and care and pull your fibres out so that they're pretty thin and even. Then when you let your twist into the fibre, you should have had a finer yarn. Now, if you want a thicker yarn, a chunkier yarn, you do the same thing. You put more twist in your fibre, and then when you draft, just leave a lot more fibre in your draft, and that way you'll get a much thicker yarn. I wanted to show you how you can do the park and draft method, but standing up. So instead of parking the spindle between your knees, what you can do is you can park it under your arm, like this. And you can just draft out in front of you, just like that. The next thing I want to show you is how to let the spindle drop. This involves taking a bit of a leap of faith, but as you've been practicing with your park and draft method, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. So what you need to do is you need to spin the spindle. Whereas before we were just watching the spindle spin, what you're going to do this time is to use your free hand and go straight up to the top where you're drafting. So I'm spinning the spindle and I'm straight away going to the top of my fibre to do the drafting. So after you've spun your yarn, you're going to want to wind it into a ball. And the way you do this is you hold the spindle up and very slowly untwist the yarn from the hook and then simply wrap it around your fingers into a ball. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Today I've been using my own spindles and fibre, which I make myself. If you want to know more about these, then you can find them in my Spin City shop on Etsy. If you have any questions, then just leave me a message below, and happy spinning!